Good morning, Dog Nation. I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. Man, we're in a great mood today and a chance to come in here and celebrate another win against Florida. I will warn you that for whatever reason, we had a big high school game on Friday and obviously the cocktail party on Saturday. My voice probably got a little banged up more so than it was, so you may notice a little bit. You may even get a laugh along. My voice has cracked a couple of times where you do the almost like the prepubescent thing of the, you may hear a little squeak at some point. And if you do, you can laugh at me. I'm sure you already will. You don't need my permission, but you're free to do that if you'd like. But we're feeling fine. We're feeling great. We're obviously thrilled about doing this here today. And I just cannot believe sometimes that these are the things we get to talk about. Another one of these now, 8 of 9 for Kirby against Florida, 5 straight just in this iteration alone. So we're going to get into it, what it means in this rivalry, what it means for Georgia this season, what it means for Georgia about what may come next. We'll try to touch on all of those things, the attention the game got from folks kind of outside the bubble on this. We'll cover all of that here today. Also, one of Georgia's rivals has fired its coach again. It feels like we do that every couple of years, too. Jon Stinchcomb comes by to help talk to us all about it. We got so much to do, y'all. It was another amazing, amazing weekend in Jacksonville and all around those Golden Isles and Florida coast and all the places where Georgia fans are gathered together and just making moments and memories, and we tried to soak up every single one. Great win for Georgia. Let's get ready to talk about it as DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, viewed to be the best.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
I will tell you this, you do not get tired of watching those celebrations in Jacksonville. And if you're with us on video today, Cody Chaffins and Jay Black and our team that puts this stuff together for us, we had a chance to relive a lot of those great celebrations there right a moment ago from another win for Georgia against Florida. And the feelings that I have around this are just so they're almost overwhelming. And I know we try to bring that to you on our Dog Nation post-game call-in show on Saturday. I know Jeff Sintel, who joined me for part of that, feels very much the same way that I do. Rodrigo Blankenship and I were talking about this a little bit, feels that way to him as well. He's a part of obviously what we do on there too, where you just realize this venue, which as I talked about a lot last week, is changing. You're not going to be going back there for 2 years. It's going to be a completely different experience when you do go back. That for so many reasons, this felt like an end of an era for the cocktail party. I am overly nostalgic anyway. I don't think you can talk about Georgia, Florida without being somewhat nostalgic. And when you realize just how much Georgia has dominated this rivalry in the decade of Kirby Smart, the sense of appreciation I have for that compared to what I grew up with, what I experienced for most of my life until these last 10 years, going on 10 years now, full-time for Kirby Smart as coach, it's almost just too much. You're almost just bowled over by all of it, but it is so much fun, and we're just so happy about all of that here today, getting another one of these wins. And obviously, you'll circle a couple of key moments in the game. Georgia gets the big fourth down stop against them, marches down the field and scores. Gunnar Stockton, we've learned, checks to the running play. Chauncey Bowens takes the house, the former Florida commit. Then with Georgia getting the football back, gets the 3rd and 8 conversion that allowed them to keep the football, that essentially put the game on ice. Those are the big moments. There's also the minor controversy in the eyes of some as it relates to the officiating. We'll get to that here in a moment. But really, it was Georgia making the big plays when it needed to, when it mattered most, as it has been doing all season long. And something about this one, doing it again in this spot, in this venue, it does. It just hits a little different. It just feels a little different to be able to experience that way. And after the game, Kirby Smart acknowledged that, yeah, you know what? Even though you don't say a lot going into the week and all the games are the same and blah, 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 and that's what a coach has to do. We understand that Kirby's got a job to do and he can't overemphasize any one thing at the expense of something else. But it's also okay to be a little more relaxed when the game is over. Once you've got the win securely in hand, can you admit it was a big one? Kirby Smart was more than happy to do that. This is Kirby after the game.
Yeah, it's big. I don't think it's because it's the last game. It's because it's the next game. I mean, it has nothing to do with where we'll be next year or any of that. I told our guys, we got guys that won't ever come back here. We got guys that for the next 2 years, they will not play in this venue, so it'll be played somewhere else. But really good football team, and I don't think anybody would want to play them regardless of their record.
So you've got some seniors that are going out 4-0. You've got at least 2, right? And it may just be the 2. But Cash Jones, Micah Morris are guys that have, in the time they've been at Georgia, they've been here for all 5 of the Georgia wins. It feels like Micah Morris has been here since 2017. But they've been here for 5 years as redshirt seniors. They've been here for 5 straight Georgia wins. And I'm just telling you, and I know there's a younger generation of Georgia fans that they don't process the same way, and I'm fine with that. They're making their own memories. They're doing their own thing, and one day when they got gray hair like I do, they'll be telling their own experience of how they came up as Georgia fans. But for some of us, it is awe-inspiring that Georgia has dominated this series as much as it has. In fact, as a way of just trying to provide some proper context, and total confession here, this is a little bit self-indulgent. I went back to the early days of DawgNation Daily. I'm talking about like episode 309. We're barely a year on the air, actually a little bit more than a year of doing the show. And, first of all, it's just weird to go back and hear the show from so long ago, not on video yet, just figuring out how to do this. And it's year 1 of Kirby Smart. And in year 1 of Kirby Smart, Georgia lost to Florida again. It was the 2nd straight loss for Georgia. Been the 3rd straight loss for Florida. No, 4th straight loss for Georgia against Florida in that particular run. But there had been, a million losses, prior to that. You're talking about 8 of 10 and, 20, over a 30-year period, Georgia losing 20-something of those games. Just complete dominance in the rivalry. And all the Gator hater paraphernalia that we have on the show here and all the stuff that we do, all of our little, gimmicks and shticks and things like that, all of this began at that moment. It's 2016. We're not on video. I'm just doing this as a podcast. We're stuck in a closet somewhere. I'm doing the show that way. And I went back and listened to these shows, getting ready for this show today. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of that week, just complaining up one side and down the other that Georgia couldn't beat Florida. And if Georgia wanted to win a national championship, it had to make a goal to beat Florida first. And if you could beat your rivalry more, beat your biggest rival more regularly, you'd have a chance to aspire to do great things. And Georgia fans needed to view this rivalry more so than anything else as the one that mattered because Georgia had been so feudal in it. It's really amazing to go back and hear all of this from way back then. So if you will indulge me for a second, can we go back down memory lane just for a minute to talk about what it used to be back almost a full 10 years ago, 9 years ago, almost a full 10 years ago, me essentially begging Georgia to start taking this rivalry more seriously and begging Georgia to find a way to win this game for a change. This is from when we were just a podcast way back in November of 2016. Here I am, a much younger version of myself. Take a listen to this.
This is one of those things moving forward where Georgia needs to say, hey, we got so many rivals. We got this school and that school and that school. Even though geographically that may be true, and I hear from you guys all the time that say I live in this part of the world and therefore this team is the team that I hate the most, I understand that's specific for you. But generally speaking for DawgNation, the number one rival is supposed to be Florida. And moving forward, that's what on DawgNation Daily we're going to do our part to try to make be true. We're going to try to say moving forward that Florida is the game for Georgia, more so than any other, that the Dogs have to win. We talked this week about the idea of being a good Georgia fan and what does it mean to be a good Georgia fan. Well, one of the things that I'd like to see included in that definition, that moving forward, a good Georgia fan is a Gator hater, first and foremost, before anything else.
So that's me way back then saying, hey, listen, Georgia's been dominating this rivalry, but we're going to try to change it. We're going to make it our personality. We're going to make it our mission to stop all these losses to Florida, 20-something overall over the course of a 30-year period, 4 or 5 years in a row of Florida beating Georgia, even in just that span. We said, we're going to say somehow, some way, this stops. This comes to an end. And the best idea I could come up with at the time to do this, I introduced for the very first time on that particular show is episode 309. By the way, you can go back and re-listen. If Google doesn't quite work as a search engine the way it used to, they're not easy to search. But if you can find these old episodes, here I am saying, here's what we're going to do to say a good Georgia fan is a Gator hater first and foremost. Here's how we're going to try to make this rivalry the big deal it's supposed to be. Once again, me from November of 2016, a long time ago.
The folks I want to see Georgia hate is Florida. I want to see the passion return for this rivalry on the part of Georgia fans. I want to see a whole legion of Gator haters rise up. And I'm not quite sure exactly how we're going to do this yet, but we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that over the next few weeks, the next few months, for the next year until Georgia gets a chance to right the wrongs in this series in Jacksonville next October. So at the very least, here's what we're going to do. Today, I begin the Gator hater countdown. By my tally, it is 359 days until Georgia gets a chance to go beat up on Florida in the cocktail party next year. And we're going to count down those days every year. Not because the other games don't matter. Georgia takes a trip to South Bend next year. That's going to be a ton of fun. Auburn may be pretty good next year. That game's going to matter. Hopefully Georgia's better, so they're all slightly more important. But none are more important than the Florida game. We're going to count down to it. Because here on DawgNation Daily, we believe that the best UGA fans are Gator haters first and foremost.
I mean, you want to talk about a time capsule. Here we are, before Georgia had been to Notre Dame, worried about what Auburn might be, but saying, we got to find a way to beat Florida. We got to find a way to get this rivalry back to being what it's supposed to be. We got to figure out a way to make that happen. That is a young man, and by the way, much younger. I was still in my 30s then. That is a young man with desperation in his voice. That is a young man who's like, if I'm going to try to do this show for the rest of my life, I can't be losing to Florida every single year. We got to try to find a way to do that. Eddie, was not even a imagination at that point. The Gator hater logo that we would eventually, I don't want to say make famous, but that we would make a big part of what we do, that hadn't even been close to invented yet. All the things that we would eventually do, all of that sprung from this notion way back then that with Georgia on a long losing streak to Florida, I guess it'd been 5 years in a row since Georgia had beaten Florida, on a long losing streak, we said, we're going to count it down every single day because we believe that this rivalry can change and it could change the following season. Now, what if you could have told that young man, as I was, that and I'm not an idiot. I'm not pretending that I'm the one that changed the rivalry. I'm just saying that when we called for it to change, boy, did it. What if you could have told me that eventually I would see from that moment forward, Georgia win 8 of the next 9, win 2 national championships in the process, multiple SEC championships as well. What would that young man back then, just figuring out how to do this show and just learning who the audience was and what our relationship was going to be, that when I sat there and said, we're going to do a Gator hater countdown because we want Georgia to change the rivalry against Florida, could you ever imagine it would have changed as much as it did? That's the emotion of this rivalry for me. Now, different folks have different emotions. We talked last week about the amazing story of Gunnar Stockton and his grandfather and his heart attack there at this game in 2010. And after the game, much like I have my own emotion for my own reason, Gunnar all the more so because he's the quarterback that actually played in the game. He talked about his emotion around all of this too. And many of you have your own similar tales of, yeah, for my own story and my own family reasons and my own stuff, this one means a lot. And for those of us who feel that way, Gunnar spoke for all of us.
Yeah, it means a lot. My family, we have some history with this game, and unfortunately I lost my granddad. But I just coming into it, I had a lot of emotion, and I was just really excited just to be able to play in this game. And since for every year, it's just been really special to come down here and play in it.
Special indeed, and I'm talking about so special to watch the way in which Georgia just wins it year after year after year. We never get tired of saying that, and I'm so thrilled for the role that Gunnar Stockton played in making all that happen. Now, let me slightly shift, although stay on the same general theme. So for those of us who grew up around the rivalry and experienced so much frustration and futility and listened to Corey Smith sing songs about it and all of that, for those of us who have that as a backstory, the game means that. But there's also the meaning in the present tense of in a year in which Georgia just does these amazing fourth quarter performances, comebacks, back against the wall, clutch moments coming up big. This was another one of those as well, where Georgia just finds a way, somehow, some way, they just will not relinquish their opportunity to win, even when it seems like, well, maybe this time the magic's just not going to come back. Somehow the magic always comes back. And after the game, Gunnar Stockton talked about that too.
Yeah, I think it starts with Coach Smart and just the mindset that he has. We don't look at the scoreboard, and I think everybody here, we got great teammates and everybody believes in it. And when you have that, good things happen.
So Gunnar says, yeah, we don't look at the scoreboard. And you're going to hear Kirby Smart say some version of that in a moment. And I do get that. However, I don't think, with all due respect to the guys who make the wins happen, I don't think that necessarily fully explains it. Because when Gunnar says, yeah, we don't look at the scoreboard, what that would be an explanation for is why that Georgia doesn't let the pressure get to them. You understand this? A lot of us know what it feels like to be worse than our best when the pressure really comes in life, whether that's trying to break 90 in golf or trying to close the sale in the big prospect meeting. Some of us have experience with, well, this is a big moment where I can come up clutch, but the moment gets to be a little too big, and not thinking about the scoreboard or the stakes of the situation would be an explanation for how you keep from being overcome by the pressure. But when I think about Georgia, that's not quite what I think is going on here. In fact, as we have that conversation, I'm going to let you hear Dalen Everett, the Georgia cornerback, his explanation for how it is that Georgia just seems to rise to the occasion in these moments when it matters most, in the most crucial time of the game in that fourth quarter. Here's Dalen Everett's explanation for all of this.
I mean, that's how it's been the past couple of games, but, we try to do a better job of starting on faster. And, we know what type of team we are in the second half. Like, we a team, we get more energy as the game goes, and that's been shown the past couple of weeks, so we just did a good job with that.
See, it's that thing that Everett says that I almost feel like comes a little closer to the accurate description. He's right when he says, or at least he alludes to, I don't know that we can keep doing this. We've certainly done this in recent weeks. I don't know that we need to keep doing this, but we get more energy as the game goes along. And that's really what I feel like I see. Somehow, Georgia seems to not just be as good as its best in the fourth quarter. That's what you would do if you're, not being overcome by the moment. Somehow Georgia gets better. Somehow Georgia is at its absolute apex of performance when they absolutely cannot afford any more mistakes. That somehow that's when Georgia is even better than it's been at any point in the game. And I don't know if this is quite true, but it certainly looks true. It feels true. It's almost like they crave that pressure to finally feel the way they need to feel to go out and do what they need to do. And obviously when you live on the razor's edge like that, the margin for error becomes really thin, and I would not advise them to keep doing it if they can help it. But I am just wildly entertained by the fact that they have so successfully done that as much as they have this year. And as Gunner alluded to a moment ago, what Kirby Smart has said about this sort of thing, Kirby, after the game, did say almost exactly what Gunner said that he would say, and more too. Here is Kirby Smart's own thoughts about these continual comebacks and thrilling late game heroics and all of the things that have made Georgia for this particular season. Here is Kirby Smart again.
Does it help? Or does it, I don't know, I don't believe in playing with fire, but if I could just write the script and say, yeah, let's go up by 14, let's go up by 21, I don't write the script. So the script kind of plays out. I know that our kids are not uncomfortable playing from that. They don't get chained to a scoreboard. There's people that play chained to the scoreboard. Our guys are free of that, and they just play to the team and keep chopping. And if you keep chopping, eventually good things happen. I do think we're very well conditioned. I do think our guys believe in winning in the fourth.
I've referenced a book before, Anti-Fragile by a guy named Nassim Taleb. It's a book that some people may have read where it talks about organizations not just being non-fragile, but actually anti-fragile, meaning they become even stronger in the most pressure-packed moments. I feel like that's what Georgia is. I think that Kirby does a pretty good job of describing it there, that Georgia's just comfortable in those situations. And it would be better if Georgia didn't play so many close games. And if you keep playing close games as much as Georgia is, it's probably going to buy them at some point, just being real, that there's probably a price to be paid for playing these one-score, down-to-the-wire games every single week. Eventually a ball may not bounce your way. Sometimes that happens. But for the moment, Georgia just doesn't survive in these games. It actually thrives in the most pressure-packed of situations. It is an amazing thing to see. They are, to use a phrase that Kirby Smart used before, hard to kill. And if anything, if you leave them with a chance, if you give them any reason to believe, they seem to, as Dalen Everett said, gain even more strength in the process. So to sum all of this up, I'll say it this way. Saturday's win for Georgia against Florida was fun for me because of what it has meant for all the years that I've been going there. And that much younger version of myself on this show back when we were really first just getting started, who was begging Georgia to beat Florida and begging this program to figure out a way to how to flip this rivalry. And they did. They have, and they're still doing it, we believe, for a very long time to come. But even in the present tense, for those who don't have the same long-standing memories that some of us have, to see this team this season, whether it be overtime against Tennessee or come back ferociously against Auburn or shoot out against Ole Miss or now this game against Florida, just seeing a team that's showing so much resilience, so much physical and mental toughness, and being at its absolute best in the most pressure-packed of situations. This is, for me, becoming a very memorable season. I still don't know how it's going to end, but it is a lot of fun to experience here in this moment. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We are happy that you are with us, no matter how you get to us. All these, years ago, it was just a podcast, and it was just that audio version. Now we're on video, and we got these great things we can show you, like we did off the top of the show. If you're watching on video, the celebration and the moments in Jacksonville, fun to be able to do that. Radio on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref podcast, wherever you find them, including worldfamousDawgNation.com. It is just such a thrill to be talking to you on this show in what is our 10th anniversary season. We've been doing this now going on 11 years, 10 years worth of shows for us to look back on, and a lot of time talking about the Georgia Bulldogs. And man, it is just so great to be doing that with you here today. We appreciate our friends at Pella Window and Door of Georgia who make it possible. And we love great sponsors like Pella because of the connection they have to Georgia fans such as yourself. And right now, in honor of that, they're doing something amazing. In this space, every single Monday on this show, you hear me encouraging you to reach out to one of those Pella experts, talk about upgrading the windows in your home and getting the fuel efficient. That's a totally different thing. Energy efficient benefits you would get from that, saving money this time of year on your heating bills, perhaps, looking good on the outside of your home. All of that is true, but for the moment, there's an even better incentive to get that consultation scheduled with one of those Pella experts. Right now, between now and November 14th, when you schedule that free consultation with the Pella expert, it's going to give you a chance to win a pair of tickets to the big rivalry game on November 29th between Georgia and Georgia Tech. So here's how it goes. You've got between now and November 14th to schedule your consultation, to talk to them about the whole process and what the windows can do for you, and just learn, because you hear me say it, but those folks can tell you even more, how you can reduce the sound that you hear on the inside of your home. You got a busy road near your house, trucks rattling, rumbling. You don't want to hear that inside. Well, the Pella windows can reduce the sound that you hear in your home by more than 50%. They can tell you all about that kind of thing. But it's also important to you that just that free in-home consultation, and that alone is going to give you a chance to win a pair of tickets to see Georgia Tech on November 29th. So got to get the consultation scheduled prior to November 14th. We'll draw the winner on November 18th. If you want to find out more about this, you can go to PellaGA.com/dogs. That's PellaGA.com/dogs. PellaGA.com/dogs. Book your consultation with the Pella expert. That is how you get registered for your chance to win. Do it before November 14th. So you got to act quick to do that. And then you could be on your way to see the Dogs and the Jackets in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But get this, it's not just any pair of tickets. This is also a pair of tickets in a suite. You get the food, you get the beverage. You've got all of that as a part of this experience. I think of Pella as a luxury product, so it's not a surprise if they're going to do a ticket giveaway. It would be a luxury ticket giveaway. This is one of those. It's a pair of sweet tickets, food, beverage, amazing view. Really, a Mercedes-Benz Stadium suite is a pretty big deal. You'll be very, very privileged there that day. And so if you win this from Pella, that's where you'll be sitting for that game coming up on Black Friday afternoon. So one more time, PellaGA.com/dogs. That's PellaGA.com/dogs. Register for your in-home consultation. Just have a talk with one of the Pella experts. That's all you got to do to be registered for your chance to win. So it's a great chance to learn more about Pella while also getting a chance to win some tickets. One more time, PellaGA.com/dogs. Let me see if I can say it a little slower. PellaGA.com/dogs for your chance to win on that. Okay, before we move on, let me also remind you of this. We got a big event coming up here on November 13th we want you to be a part of, live at the Terrapin Brewery in Athens. Terrapin's an amazing craft beer that's so deeply connected to Athens, Georgia. People around the Athens area are so proud of the great brewery tradition that exists around Athens, and Terrapin is certainly one of the best, our favorite for sure. And they're going to be hosting a big event for us coming up Thursday, November 13th from 6 to 9 p.m. So DawgNation folks going to be there, special guests on hand too. We'll be talking a lot of Georgia football there that night. Cercheros providing some free food. It's free to get in. We just need an RSVP from you. So go to DawgNation.com/on-tap for more on that. That's DawgNation.com/on-tap. Just simply RSVP to say, yeah, I'm going to be there. The Cercheros food will be there for you. The fun Q&A with us, the live experience, that's going to be a part of this. Your first beer that night from Terrapin is complimentary. You'll love that. By the way, speaking of ticket giveaways, the following Saturday is the big one for Georgia against Texas. We're going to be doing a ticket giveaway that night for the big one in Athens that Saturday there at the event. So you want to be a part of this. It's DawgNation on tap, a free event, but we're going to ask you to RSVP. So go to DawgNation.com/on-tap to do that. Free food courtesy of Cercheros, first beer courtesy of Terrapin, an amazing night with the DawgNation team and some special guests. It's Thursday, November 13th from 6 until 9 p.m. We cannot wait for you to be a part of that. Okay, it's Jon Stinchcomb in a moment. Prior to that, though, let's get ready to go around the Dawghouse today, poured by our friends at Dr. Pepper. Okay, so there was, not to us, but some of the folks around this game noticed kind of a hot topic moment where late in the game, DJ Lagway is going to attempt to pass here. Receiver gets behind the Georgia secondary. If he stays on his feet, if the throw is better, it's probably a surefire touchdown. That's the way that's probably going to go. Ultimately, the throw is short from Lagway. Receiver has to dive to try to get it, and the ball touches the ground. And we've got great video from our guy Cody Chaffins on this. What a great job he does putting this together. And to my eyes, and I don't pretend to be an objective observer, so non-Georgia fans will disregard me, and frankly, I don't care what they think about this or much anything else. But to my eyes, it's just fairly obvious that the ball caroms and goes into the receiver's hand, Sturdivant's hand. Just fairly obvious that's what it does. It's a close call, but as I've said now more than once this season, just because it's close doesn't mean that it's controversial. And I just think you've got pretty clear and compelling evidence that the right call was made in the field at the time. It was ultimately upheld by replay. The ball hits the ground. It's essentially trapped, to use a baseball term. And close call. Florida fans obviously will think about what could have been on that, but ultimately the officials, I think, got it right. After the game, Kirby Smart says, even if the officials got it right, and ultimately he's already had enough dust-ups with officials for 1 year probably. Didn't want to necessarily go down that road, but he did acknowledge that with the receiver getting behind the defense, and if Lagway makes a better throw, although we didn't say it that way, that Georgia's probably fortunate that it didn't turn out to be a touchdown for those lousy, stinking Gators. This is Kirby after the game.
I saw a wide open guy. We got busted coverage. So we got a guy that's supposed to be in the half. He got the wrong signal and played the wrong defense. We had nobody back there. I mean, we're insanely lucky that, number one, he didn't score, but that he didn't catch it. I didn't see anything. I mean, I don't know. I can't tell. I mean, that's their job.
Yeah, so he ain't going down the road of officials again. And obviously, with the issues with the Auburn game, Kirby's going to stay far away from that. Incorrectly saying the officials, saw it, they called what they called. And as I said before, I think the video, if you're watching a video that we're showing you right now, pretty clear and compelling that the ball did touch the ground first. Of course, some Florida fans are going to jump on that with Kirby saying, he said they were lucky. He admitted they got a lucky break. Not from the officials, though. He means just simply from the fact that it was a bad throw and that the receiver wasn't able to stay on his feet. That's the part that Georgia was lucky about. And to be honest, they were lucky. And you don't win a lot of games like this if you don't get some stroke of luck going your way every now and then. But if you want a real gotcha as it comes from a particular coach here, we think we have that with Billy Gonzalez, the Florida interim coach, who, in the midst of talking about the moment, was asked directly, did you think it was a catch? And, well, listen for the answer that Gonzalez gave to that question post-game. Here he is.
It's hard. You take a look at we're going to go back and watch film, and there's probably going to be more than one of those type of plays. But it's one of those things. It just didn't work the way that we wanted it to work today. The seniors got to continue to lead. Young guys got to continue to get better, and we got to just keep fighting.
Did you think it was a catch?
No.
Did you think it was a catch? No. We're done here. We're done here. Not even the Florida coach thought it was a catch. So there is very little to say about this. I'll also remind people that when it comes to the non-Georgia fans that seem to want to find their way, first of all, you can see the ball turn when it hits the ground. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. The ball changes direction upon hitting the ground. I mean, what are we even doing here? I mean, it is fairly obvious that the ball touches the ground and Sturdivant does not have control over it. But keep in mind this, for those who are not Georgia fans who want to say, oh, Georgia always gets the breaks from the officials. If you want to go back and look 2024, 2023, 2022, Georgia was outside the top 100 nationally in penalty yards per games against its opponents. If the officials are rigging games for Georgia over the course of the last 3 years, they're terrible at it because whoever Georgia's playing is among the least penalized team in America in the game that it's playing Georgia. So this notion that Georgia always gets a break from the officials, the penalty yardage per game over the 3 previous seasons certainly would suggest otherwise there on that. So they are desperate to find something to hang on Georgia because right now this very hard-to-kill Georgia team is a very bad thing for those who are hoping for the Bulldogs' demise. UGA not cooperating with that storyline here right now. And we'll make that around the Dawghouse. It's poured today by our friends at Dr. Pepper. Now, you better believe after a long weekend of high school football, then going to the cocktail party, then coming back home quick, and being back here today, you better believe when this show is done, I'm going to need the pick-me-up that I get from the delicious, one-of-a-kind flavor of Dr. Pepper. And I'm thrilled to have them as a part of Around the Dawghouse. I love having them a part of college football. When you watch the games during the weekend, you see the Fansville commercials. I think they're really funny. They've got the one this year with the hot seat. And by the way, that's never been more relevant given all the coaches that are getting fired. But that's just what Dr. Pepper is. Their Fansville commercials are funny because Dr. Pepper just knows the landscape of college football because they've been a part of it for such a long time. They've also been a pretty big part of DawgNation Daily here for a good time as well for a long period of time. I love the fact that when Dr. Pepper thinks about college football, they think about DawgNation Daily. That's something I'm incredibly proud of. We love having them as a part of Around the Dawghouse and a big part of everything we do here around DawgNation. So, glad to have you today here, too. Plenty to talk about. We'll keep the conversation going. Georgia beats Florida again. Let's talk about what the guy who knows what the cocktail party's all about and knows what's next for Georgia here, too. How about Jon Stinchcomb today, DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
John, we're doing it again. I know we did this after the Auburn game. We're kind of right back here to it. And listen, I realize, we always have some non-Georgia fans. I don't know why they do this. I mean, of course, listen, the clicks all count the same, so I'm happy to have whoever wants to watch or listen. But we'll always have a contingent of non-Georgia fans that'll tune in. And I'm sure they're just beside themselves that to me, it is just obvious that ball touched the ground before Sturdivant had a chance to secure it. I don't think that's controversial at all. It is close. Close does not equal controversial. I don't even think this is as close as the Jackson-Arnold thing from the Auburn game. This, to me, seems a lot more cut and dry than that. But it is one of those things that gets talked about here, but not objective, but still fairly certain. Do your eyes see on that play what mine see?
Story should be, if I'm a Florida fan, which I will never be, thank the good Lord,
Sure.
is that what a grossly underthrown ball. You finally have a chance. You get behind a defense. You hear Coach Smart talk about it was a huge bust in the back end of our secondary, and they can't deliver. So that's what they should be upset about. Here you are, you have a chance against a rival top 5 team, and you blow it. And don't put that on the refs. Don't put that on bad juju. It's just a missed opportunity. I would hope that we would be in that same space or complaining about the right things. It's you missed out on yet another play where you should have executed. And I think that's the storyline for them. But I don't really care about them. I think for Georgia, you look at this game and you see you continue to find ways to win. And it has demanded gritty performances time and time and time again. With the exception of a 3-point loss against Alabama, Georgia continues to need to rally in the second half and have the grit and fortitude to be able to do that. And it's a testament to the fact that Coach Smart says his team doesn't scoreboard watch and get chained to it. And boy, do we see that week in and week out. I'd love to win an easy one and be able to relax in the second half, but that hasn't been a luxury this team has provided us. But yet, we continue to win ball games. And at the end of the day, that's the entire point as you get better throughout the season is you want to be able to do that with the W column filling up, and that's what Georgia's doing.
So as an athlete yourself and a guy who played in the biggest games, literally the biggest game that you can play in and win that one, I want to ask you this because you know the mindset required for winning. To me, it's not that Georgia is able to handle pressure. That's not enough. That's not an accurate description. So far this season, Georgia is better in the more pressure-packed moments. It's not that their performance doesn't regress in the heat of the moment. It's that they find an extra gear when the pressure is at its absolute apex. And I find that fascinating. And it's not guaranteed to continue. Of course, it would be more guaranteed to continue if they're winning every game by 21 points, the way they would have a couple of years ago. That's more guaranteed to replicate itself. This, if anything, you wonder if it runs out at some point. But for now, it's not just that they're withstanding the pressure, it's that they are becoming outstanding in the face of the pressure. This is a literal question. How do they do that?
Well, I think it's part of the fabric that's instilled, the culture that exists in Athens. I think the fact that Coach Smart runs such a hard practice that what they expect is the ability to focus and execute. And it's not sexy, BA. I mean, this isn't something that will get a bunch of clicks and a bunch of bites because, it seems kind of boring. You're telling me all they have to do is focus and execute. And it's, yes, the fact that they run hard practices, the fact they've been in that situation, the fact that that's the expectation is when the temperature gets turned up, that you can block out the noise and even focus more than what we've seen prior. It's a defining characteristic of this program. This year is not the anomaly. I think we've seen it in years past, and I think it's part of the culture at Georgia is to not let the moment be too big for you. In big games, even when you're behind on the scoreboard, you look at other programs, you look at other teams, you look at other coaches, and you see it unravels pretty quickly. And consistently, Georgia has been able to go into those moments and execute when it's the hottest, when the temperature is turned up all the way to 10. And I think it's part of the culture at Georgia. The expectations are high. When the environment is roughest, they are able to rise to the occasion again and again. And it's something that they practice. It's something that they preach. It's something that the players have bought in. You don't see the boneheaded mistakes that you see across the country from other teams. And I think that's a testament to what's been created and instilled in that entire program.
All right, we are back. Unfortunately, obviously, who knows? Just horrible issues there seem to affect every video platform. And I guess you weren't hearing the show and you got it sounds like from some people more than their fair share of our good friends at Dr. Pepper, which we love, but perhaps that looped a little longer than it probably should have, far longer than it should have. But we are back now. We've been talking to Jon Stinchcomb. What a mess this is. Jon, you've been giving great information. I'm sorry that the full audience didn't get to hear it. We'll see if we can piece all of this together for the podcast later on. But I loved everything that you were saying. I guess let's just pick up and move on with the conversation. And for those of you who've stuck with us somehow through all of this, maybe even finding a different stream in doing so, I certainly appreciate your patience on what obviously is a day we are thrilled to be here and doing it, but just unfortunately not without some trouble, some adversity. But much like Georgia, who becomes a fourth quarter team, we'll also see if we can fight through some of that adversity here right now. And Jon, I guess to just move on, I think one of the things that probably fuels Georgia the most is the fact that this win came with two things that Georgia loves: physicality on both offense and defense. I mean, I think Kirby accurately said biggest play of the game is the fourth down stop that Georgia got, where if Florida converts there, they may just keep the football and then Georgia has no chance of winning. Absolutely got the stop when it absolutely had to. Then it marches down the field and scores. And then after that, Chauncey Bowens, in addition to his touchdown, gets the 3rd and 8 run that enabled Georgia to then chew up the clock too. it's the physical nature of these fourth quarter moments that were so big for Georgia. And that feels like something you can really build on, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's one of those characteristics of a team where, we saw the Alabama game. We needed the ball back, weren't able to get it. In this scenario, two big fourth down stops against the Gators that allowed the offense the opportunity even to take the lead and kind of salt the game away, if you will. And credit to Florida, rarely want to do that, but defensively early on made the run game a real challenge. And so late in the game, the commitment to the run and the ability to still execute, Chauncey Bowens being a big piece of that, is one of the reasons why Georgia was able to kind of maintain the lead and win the game. And I think that's something that it takes a lot of grit. It's one of those where they never got away from who they were. Were able to continue to run the ball, even though it was tough sledding early on, and leaned on it late in the game in a way that, in that 4-minute offense where you have to maintain possession, that's what they practice for. And again, it's something that we've seen the growth of this team throughout the season. They continue to improve in certain key areas, and there's still more opportunities out there, BA. I mean, we all know that, Georgia defensively, we haven't created a lot of turnovers. We don't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback to force them into bad decisions. But yet, in those scenarios, when it's fourth and short, they came up big against a rival that was motivated. We haven't really talked about it much, but with the changing of the head coach position, usually provides a spark, and they play with a little more zing to their game. And Georgia was able to respond and continues to probably weather more punches than they want to take throughout the game, but find a way to win in the end.
So I haven't talked about this yet on the show today. I think I'm going to do more of this later on in the week. And Gunnar Stockton could care less about this. He doesn't cultivate fame or anything like that. He goes about his business in the exact opposite manner, to be honest with you. But I do think the way in which he takes the knee at the end of the game, and obviously a lot of people kind of paid attention to that from a point spread standpoint because that prevented the Georgia cover. A lot of the non-Georgia fans don't realize that this is a sequel to going into the end zone against Auburn, something that Kirby Smart did not want him to do. I think in a roundabout way, this is going to end up making Gunnar more famous because I think a lot of more people paid attention to that. And I do think that Gunnar is now going to be, in the eyes of the national media types and just the larger college football fan base beyond DawgNation, I think that Gunnar's going to have a much higher profile now than he did before with the very elegant way that he brought this game to an end. Gunnar doesn't cultivate that sort of thing, but I do think a lot more people know who Gunnar Stockton is now compared to before this game began, John.
Yeah. Can I comment on the fact that he was not the only one to take a knee?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Go ahead. Please tell us about it. Yeah, I saw that.
I just thought it was hilarious. Oscar Delp puts a little hand on the edge rusher there and kind of escorts him to the end zone, but he also takes a knee, which I found fascinating, which I'm sure it was a point of emphasis following the Auburn game where Gunnar Supermans his way into the end zone, scores a touchdown. I don't know if that's ever a bad thing, but obviously Coach Smart, with all the stat heads out there that are saying you never want to give your opponent another possession and the power to score, onside kick, score again, all those things. I get it. But, for the national attention that Gunnar continues to build, it hasn't been flashy. He's not a flashy guy and continues to protect the ball well, does more than manage. I think that was probably the narrative early on, is that he's a game manager. That's not who he is. He's able to create. He's just not flashy. And I think the more you watch Georgia play, the more you realize the vital nature of how he conducts himself as a quarterback in this offense, and is a main reason why Georgia sits where they do, is because of his style of play, that he quietly creates when the pocket breaks down and he can extend and he gains yardage with his legs and creates those opportunities in the mismatches and gets the ball where it needs to be. He added another interception, which are few and far between, but off a pass that hit his receivers in the hands. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of undervalued in his game, that he probably doesn't have the stats of, the old Northwest teams, the teams in the Pacific Northwest that, they put up 7 passing touchdowns a game and 500 yards. He's not that guy, but he's able to get the ball where it needs to go more often than not. He protects it and he creates with his legs. And I think there's an appreciation from that. There certainly is among his teammates in that locker room. And I think everyone that's watching Georgia continue to rattle off these wins in difficult fashion is gaining an appreciation for what he's able to do and what he brings to this offense.
John, I want to ask you one more question before we let you go. Prior to that, let me remind folks that Georgia gets a big rivalry win against Florida on Saturday, but there's another rivalry game coming up this season that's also going to be the neutral site variety. But we need to make that a Georgia home game as much as we possibly can. So I'm going to invite you Black Friday afternoon to get your tickets to see Georgia play Georgia Tech in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We want this to be feeling like a Georgia home game. Obviously, Tech loses on Saturday, but they're still going to be riding high. At least in their minds, coming into this rivalry. They want this win against Georgia bad, and it's Georgia's job to make sure they don't get it. So please go to mercedes-benzstadium.com/events to get your tickets for this game coming up Black Friday afternoon. That's the day after Thanksgiving. mercedes-benzstadium.com/events to get your tickets for this. Cannot wait to see you there for that. All right, John, before we let you go, I do a whole thing off the top of the show about the history of this rivalry, and I realize that for people who are a good bit younger than us, stuff that happened before you were born or before you were paying attention just doesn't mean the same thing to you. And I totally understand that. I really do. I'm the same way about stuff that happened way before I was born. I completely get that. But I do think if you're about my age, there is an appreciation you have for the wins that Georgia's getting now. And this was a huge topic way back when DawgNation Daily was first beginning. It remains a big topic now that Florida had been a national championship program. That's where Georgia wanted to be. And I do believe that by taking this rivalry by the throat, it's one of the things that allowed Georgia to become the championship program that it's become. And it's probably not a coincidence that Florida has faltered in the face of all of that. When Georgia flipped this rivalry starting in 2017 and winning is it 8 of 9 since then, 5 straight right now? In doing that, not a coincidence, I believe, that Georgia also won 2 national championships in the process, and certainly we believe has a chance to win many more in the seasons to come. You have lived through both sides of this, the era in which Georgia, wasn't winning a lot of games, and the era now where it's almost winning them all. It is a remarkable turnaround, is it not?
It's great. I saw a stat this morning about Florida, Tennessee, Auburn, Georgia Tech. You look at the last, 9 years, and it's something like 33-2 between all of them and Georgia's dominance. It makes me think of, I'm sure there isn't the same appreciation that we have because we remember the days of all those teams, specifically the ones in the SEC, being really, really good, and they're competing for national championships. During our era, it was Steve Spurrier, and I'm sure this next generation of fans have heard the name and know that he's a good coach. But it was probably like me, where it's like Bear Bryant was a great coach. I knew he was.
Right.
I don't remember the style of play that Alabama had under his tenure because it was before me. So there's a different appreciation when you live through it than recognizing that in the past, I'm sure they had a good program. I'm sure he was a good coach. I'm sure all of those things, but you didn't live it. And so for old heads like me and you and some of the other fans out there in Dog Nation, there is an appreciation for how the cycle has turned. And now Georgia's at the top of it. And we've put all these other programs in positions where, Florida and Auburn both are looking for new head coaches and trying to scramble for relevance again. And Georgia, during an era that so much is changing, they find a way to be on top and be competing annually for a national championship. And it's where we've always wanted this program to be. And now that we're living it out, it is a blessing that we can appreciate from a different perspective because we know how hard it is to get there and even harder to stay there.
I think that's so awesome, John. So well said. Thanks for sticking with us through. It was obviously a little bit of a mess here. I appreciate that. Your analysis top, just sharp as always. Thanks for your time. Appreciate that. Hope you have a great week. And I guess we can roll into kind of a Thanksgiving time here. And I'll start saying happy holidays, things like that. We've turned the corner on that here right now too, with Thanksgiving just a few weeks away. So John, appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Always enjoy it. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs indeed.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
All right, great stuff from Jon Stinchcomb, even with the interruption, always doing a great job with that. By the way, speaking of holiday time of year, that means Christmas not too far away either. Before we get to our SEC Through, let me remind you about our friends at Academy Sports and Outdoors and what they have ongoing for you here right now. It's a great chance to get great savings on the limited edition Magellan Outdoor Christmas Market Collection, which can only be found at Academy. You can get exclusive gear and gifts for all the parties, the fun family photos, and those Christmas morning traditions as well, and probably the entire collection. You want matching pajamas, you want the holiday print fishing shirts, which actually sounds really fun to me, plus the exclusive new Mossy Oak Snowdrift camo styles, and so much more. You can in store, you can shop there or online at academy.com. And what's amazing is you can even get same day delivery by DoorDash, because sometimes you got to have that, especially for some of us who have a tendency to shop last minute. You got to get it quick. And with DoorDash, Academy is going to let you be able to do all of that. So it's the Magellan Outdoors Christmas Market Collection. It's only at Academy. So to find out more information about this, check out academy.com. All right, let's do our SEC Through here, and let's talk about, well, it seems like we've done this a lot already this season. It seems like we do this with Auburn every couple of years. Auburn has fired Hugh Freeze. It was a disastrous performance for Auburn against Kentucky, and I really thought that Auburn was going to completely fall apart after the Georgia game. The truth is, they played relatively hard against Missouri. That's the week after the Georgia game. They came from behind to beat Arkansas, but they made the mistake against Kentucky on Saturday they've made before. You know, sometimes the phrase that you hear is, well, it can't get worse, ... And there's a lot of it can't get worse sometimes as it relates to your quarterback. You know, a year ago, they benched Peyton Thorne because it can't get worse and put another guy in, and it did get worse. Same thing on Saturday where they finally benched Jackson Arnold, which is what a lot of Auburn fans have been clamoring for, because in their mind it couldn't get worse, but it did. You lost at home to Kentucky. And this really is, I think, the reason that Hugh Freeze gets fired. He's an offensive-minded guy. You know, he has a certain kind of quarterback that he wants to work with, and at Auburn they just never got him. And in the Peyton Thorne era, it seems like, well, they didn't want to spend because they didn't really feel like they had the roster to put around a quarterback that would essentially be wasting money. And this year, either they couldn't get the quarterback they wanted to agree to come, or they just chose the wrong guy in Jackson Arnold. But this is an Auburn team. I mean, I think I have this right. They still haven't surrendered more than 24 points in a game. This defense is really good. If the offense was better, if their quarterback play was better, Auburn's probably right there in the, fringe of who could be contending, for something in the SEC. Instead, losing a bunch of games, and now Freeze has to get fired. And for Auburn fans, this must be incredibly just a dejecting feeling, because what do you do? I mean, you had Brian Harsin, who did not understand the SEC. You took the embarrassment of hiring Hugh Freeze and all the personal issues he had, because at least he understood the SEC, and he was just terrible. And I'm surprised by it. I thought he'd do better. He never sounded like an experienced SEC coach with the way he talked about this stuff. It was just really, really bad. And now, with other programs already getting a head start on their coaching search, now Auburn's going to do the same thing. They have money to spend. They have listen, as much as Georgia fans hate Auburn, you look at the crowd for that game against Kentucky on Saturday, at least to begin the game. The student section was still packed, still making a ton of noise. That's a fan base that wants to win. That's a fan base that, as an objective person, I would say deserves better than they're getting right now. As a Georgia fan, I'm glad they're as miserable as they are. But as a more objective observer, I'd say, boy, it seems like the fans are trying to support that program. They just can't find a coach. For a long time, it seems like there's just been too much input from too many voices. I won't pretend to diagnose the problem, but here we are with Auburn back to square one again. starting from scratch with another coaching search. It is amazing how bad of a program they've proven to be. As far as the games themselves from the weekend, let me mention this. So, first of all, Miami loses again, goes to SMU, leaves the state of Florida for the first time this season, loses there. Carson Beck, obviously, there was a pick in overtime. There was another thing with him in kind of his post-game remarks where it seemed like he might be blaming somebody else other than himself for the results. I try to not make too big of a deal about that because sometimes these clips are, out of context or edited in a strange way. And, I don't know. Frankly, at this point, Carson's a relatively irrelevant figure around Georgia football, but Miami does lose again. That's their second. And, boy, it certainly seems like the ACC feels like kind of a one-bid league right now. Virginia did win again on Saturday. Tech lost. You don't have a situation where Virginia, Georgia Tech, and Miami all play each other. In fact, Tech and Miami do not play each other. So you're going to have some strange tiebreaker situations about who even makes the ACC title game. But the thought that I have right now, it seems likely, unless something happens, it's still possible. But at the moment, the more likely scenario is only one team from the ACC makes the college football playoff. And if I had to guess, that's probably the conference champion. I told you I liked Texas against Vanderbilt. That's one of the ones we got right. Vandy's a good team. They came back in this game after being down big, so they deserve a lot of credit for that. But ultimately, this is just a tough ask for a Vanderbilt team. And for as good as Diego Pavia is, he's a better runner than thrower. Going on the road, making the kind of big plays you have to actually beat a Texas team that still thinks it's going to be or has a chance to compete for the college football playoff. That's just a really big ask. And ultimately, Arch played. We told you he would. Texas won. We told you he would. They would. This is still in this spot at home. Texas, just a tough team to beat. And now with Texas being off this Saturday, it does preserve, obviously assuming Georgia beats Mississippi State, but even still, it does preserve that Georgia-Texas game coming up 2 Saturdays from now, having a lot of stakes, big-time playoff implications, and just the big national game that one's supposed to be. Texas takes care of business at home, staving off a furious Vanderbilt comeback, but preserving its playoff chances in the process on that. Other outcomes of note: Mississippi beats South Carolina 30-14. That was enough to get Mike Shula fired as South Carolina offensive coordinator. That's the second coaching firing for Shane Beamer this season. If you're thinking about, does Beamer take a look at the Virginia Tech job, for instance? If you're firing assistant coaches, maybe that means you're trying to still make it happen in Columbia. I think that South Carolina is a better job than Virginia Tech is. I think that Beamer would be wise to stay. But sometimes the pull of going home or just, the thought that you might do that to make sure your fans continue to appreciate you, sometimes there's something to that. But it seems like with the basis of these moves, maybe this is Beamer, wanting to stick around South Carolina, believing he has a chance to do something. We've said before, it's not been a great season for South Carolina compared to its preseason expectations, but they haven't quit. They've been playing hard. They have had some offensive issues. That's true. Mike Shula, who had coached Cam Newton in Carolina and had some reason to believe he was going to be a pretty good OC, has turned out to be a disaster. He has now been fired. Told you Georgia Tech lost. NC State beat them. I didn't see the game, but the not a great Tech defense gives up 48 there. Look, Tech has had a high ranking next to its name. It's been undefeated. People here in Atlanta are so excited about what this might mean for a Tech team that hasn't been nationally relevant for a long time. By performance, though, Tech is kind of a top 25 team, not a legit top 10 team, not certainly commensurate with a team that's supposed to be undefeated. So it's probably a just result seeing that loss because that's a little bit more in keeping with what I think the Tech probably is. Now, even with a much worse record, they've still been competitive against Georgia. That's not a statement about how the Georgia Tech game is going to go. Frankly, Georgia is a threat to play it close against anybody. But, we've been sold, Tech's a top 10 team. They're going to go undefeated. They're going to make the college football playoff. I mean, if they win the ACC, they're obviously going to make the college football playoff, it would seem. But this is not a team that's commensurate with its ranking or its record, and losing to NC State and giving up 48 in the process, I think probably gives you an indication of that. I'll also mention to wrap things up here, Oklahoma goes on the road, beats Tennessee 33-27. this is worth talking about to me from two vantage points. Here's thing number one. This is a Tennessee team that was in the college football playoff a year ago, and now they're going to be below that here this season. And for them, that's going to be pretty disappointing. Last year, they really made the playoff on the heels of a very good defense. Their defense this year, nowhere near as good. For all the offseason attention of Joey Aguilar stepping in after Nico Iamaleava made the last-minute decision to leave, honestly, that's been fairly inconsequential to their overall results. It's really been the regression on defense that's held them out. And so I think for the most part, Josh Heupel's actually still doing a good job at Tennessee. That's a fairly consistent program. But after being in the playoff a year ago, to drop down a level below that, for them is going to be pretty disappointing. But that's what Tennessee is faced with. And for a team that has had NIL and been aggressive in that space, can they rebuild this defense back? Can they be just a little more physical? They're a tough out. They almost beat Georgia. They outgained Alabama, so they're not a pushover right now. But their defense, and we got plenty wrong this weekend, but we called this one right as well. Their defense just was not trustworthy enough to hold up in a game like this, and ultimately that's what Oklahoma proved. I'll also say really quick, this was what they call the dark mode game, where Tennessee mixes the orange and black, and they do a lot of the Halloween themed stuff, and they lost. And Tennessee has this happen a lot. They checkerboard Neyland. They lose those games. They did that to Georgia earlier this year. They'll do a dark mode. They'll lose that. They do the big, what people call gimmick or fake juice or stuff like that. They'll do these things and they lose. And it doesn't stop Tennessee from wanting to make the game day environment cool. And once again, to give a little credit to a Georgia rival, I think they do a really good job with that. If you saw some of the video imagery that came out on this, a lot of the stuff looked really cool. Tennessee does game day pretty well. They really do. And the fact that they lose games in which they make a big deal about the atmosphere for the game doesn't prevent them from wanting to do those sorts of things. I think that Georgia would be wise to pay attention to that too when it comes to the notion of a blackout or something like that. I think we're about to the point where the 2008 blackout that didn't go well for Georgia when it lost to Alabama, that's like almost 20 years ago now. Using that as a reason not to try to do fun stuff inside the stadium probably just doesn't make any sense anymore. I did not want to do that for this year's Alabama game, admittedly so. That was the wrong time to bring it back. But making some in-stadium events that make the crowd maybe a little louder and just make the experience more fun, whether the team wins or not, Tennessee seems to do that pretty well. And being a little more like that, even if you occasionally lose in those types of games, I think that's something that Georgia could probably stand to do too. We will make that our SEC through. Before we get ready to go, boy, talk about coffee. Coming off a weekend in which, so I do high school football on Friday between Milton and Roswell. Sleep that night, just outside, basically almost outside the stadium. Get up early, 5 a.m., drive straight to Jacksonville. Get there, do the game, come back, sleep a little bit. Got to be back in Georgia the next day. My son had baseball yesterday, although it got rained out. Eventually got rained out anyway. I'm doing just in and out. The old days for me, the big cocktail party and doing a long, whole bunch of stuff. You're not doing, quite as much of that anymore. It's a lot of driving for me this particular weekend, so you better believe I got plenty of caffeine keeping me loaded up there. And that's what our friends at Jittery Joe's want to provide for you right now. And they're doing this with some great Georgia theming around this as well. How about Attack the Day coffee now available in K-Cups? People love Attack the Day is a great saying that a lot of fans are appreciating. Well, you can get the Attack the Day coffee now in those K-Cups only from Jittery Joe's. It's been Athens' best coffee shop 15 years running. It's been locally owned and roasted for the last 30 years. And Jittery Joe's has also launched a franchise company now, too. With 30 years experience, they can teach you how to do this as a real turnkey business that give you a chance to stand out. We know there's a lot of coffee shops out there, and if you're obviously going to have your own Jittery Joe's franchise, you want this to stand out from the other competitors in the space. Well, Jittery Joe's knows how to do that. In fact, around DawgNation, we've been telling you about Jittery Joe's for a long time, so you already know they've got some brand recognition that others don't have. So it's a great time to get involved in these franchising opportunities. Check out jitteryjoes.com for more on that. jitteryjoes.com for more on that. And if you want to enjoy a great Jittery Joe's beverage, when you download download the Jittery Joe's app, you're going to get half off your first drink. So that's a great savings. It's a really cool thing to be able to do. We love the great taste of Jittery Joe's, and we're thrilled to have them around Dog Nation, a big part of what we're doing on game days there as well. So check out Jittery Joe's as we get close to the holiday season. Now we'll fire up that fight song. We'll get ready to hit it up. And I love this. I love clever ideas from people in our audience. We'll give a golden shoe today. We talked about the Gunnar Stockton kneel down a moment ago, and the fact that I think the Gunner's now more famous because of this than he was before. So Daniel Hammock wrote in to say, how about this? Instead of a DGD, what about the DG knee? He says, what do you think about that, DawgNation Daily? Well, Daniel, I think that's a great idea. A true DGD, Gunnar Stockton taking the DG knee as he does the kneel down right there at Tennessee. The visual of this was just great. I think Daniel's naming of it's pretty clever too. So Daniel, if you came up with that, I think you're a pretty smart guy. That's very, very clever. I think that's got some real legs to it. We'll call that the DG knee. And in fact, we'll see it here one more time. That is awesome. And as we told you, it was way back in November of 2016 that we started at that time the Gator Hater Countdown, counting down to what we thought would one day be a win for Georgia against Florida. Well, since then, it's almost all been Georgia wins. It's been 5 straight here right now, and that gives us a chance to close out today's show doing something that at one point in time would have almost been unimaginable. Being able to tell you it's been 1,822 days since Florida's beaten Georgia. We now call it our Gator Hater Updater. We count up instead of back because Georgia has done nothing but dominate this rivalry. What a great thing to consider. What a great way to close out the show. And what a cool thing to know that coming up over the course of the next year, we'll see this number get to 2,000 and beyond. And by the way, I've already got a special idea for 2000. So we'll tell you more about that as we get there. Thanks for being here. Sorry about the issues. We're happy to have you, though. DawgNation Daily presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We hope you'll come back tomorrow.